What happens if you went to the pet store, you bought 18 mice, then you took those mice home and you ran all 18 mice through a maze? Well, they would average 10 minutes from the store, right? So 10 minutes is what they all averaged right off the rip. Take the mice home, put them in there, 10 minutes to get through there at first. Now, this Christian male, this goes back to the 90s, is the first little test he did. He divided those 18 mice, 666, right? So there was three sets, three groups. One group, no music exposure. The second group, Mozart. The third group, he went to Kmart at the time and he went in there and asked, he said, let me get the most popular hard rock album you have. And so three groups, one has no music, the other group has Mozart, and the last one has hard rock, essentially. And I believe I forget what the name of Anthrax. Anthrax was the name of the rock and roll. And before the test even started, I'm like, well, they chose a band name Anthrax, right? How could you expect it to be anything else but poison? So he gave these mice, I believe it was 10 hours a day of music, right? So one group got 10 hours of Mozart a day, the other group got 10 hours of Anthrax. Other group, zero music. Well, at the end of this study, I believe it was 40 days, somewhere in there, ballpark. At the end of this study, the group that had no music, because they went and got 10 minutes originally, that was the first time, they saw the maze. By the end of that time, no music, they got it down to 5 minutes. Very respectable. So no music, they were able to cut the time in half by the end because they experienced it, knew where to go, etc. The Mozart mice, this was no surprise to me. This was no surprise to me whatsoever because, say you look at very wealthy, prosperous, affluent people, good, bad, ugly, people with money. Once you have all the houses, cars, money, clothes, blah, blah, once you have all that, what do you have left? It appears that they have art, ballet, opera, etc. And so 6 of those mice cut the time in half. They have no music whatsoever, all natural. The next group was the Mozart group. And those mice were doing that same exact maze in 1.5 minutes. And then the group of Anthrax mice, before they all killed each other, 5 out of the 6 killed each other, they were dead. Before they killed each other, they were able to clock in at a half an hour. And when I saw that, that was the first phase of his study. Pet store mice. And it was in a controlled environment, but not like the next one he did. And it was fascinating to me that you could actually put this into data, right? Whether you listen to Mozart and you're taking your 10-minute maze down to a minute and a half, or whether you're listening to Satan's music, some would say. I would, that's for sure. Hard rock, they got that nice little devil's tritone in there. Really, really, nothing perfect about it. And that little test right there, I thought that was just fantastic. And I wish more knew about it. What he did not get into was the frequencies. And so I guess since I was a child, I would often wonder, like say you were in church and they go, okay, we're going to play Psalm 23 or we're going to play Psalm 91. I would often think, I would say, well, how did they know what it sounded like? Come to find out there is a way. And I couldn't, when I would hear Mozart or Bucky, even as a child, I would say, well, if they wrote this stuff in the 1500s, how did they know what it really sounded like? And then I got into frequencies, and I started to wonder really even more. Well, how did they know what David sounded like? How did they know these things? And it boggled my mind, but so they didn't get into the frequencies, but Mozart played at 121.6 hertz, and no, 421.6, my apologies. And then I would say, well, how did they know that? They know that because they have an existing tuning fork. I believe it was from 1770 that he used, right? So 421.6 in comparison to 440 hertz, which is Satan's frequency, and that's what all music is recorded at for the most part these days, including all Christian music, including all those beautiful hymns that were written 1700s, 1800s, just these masterpieces, not lazy like today, right? Just these masterpieces that they wrote in all these different temperaments and frequencies, etc., according maybe to the magnetic rotation of the earth or something like that. Or Schumann actually would take his violin and put it onto his heart, right? And he'd hit the bow on there. As soon as he would feel his heart jump, that's how he knew he was in his frequency. And different composers, different people over different periods of time. Sorry about that. Different composers have always used different temperaments. And I would say in modern days, what I've been able to get to, mind you, this is buying an American-made Peterson Strobo tuner. It's the best one you can get. You don't go to the Guitar Center and get it. Because of that being the best you can buy, the range is further. So on the Schumann resonance, I can get to 396 and 417. I mean, both of those will just heal you. Up, down, left, right, does not matter which way you slice the pie. And I think the reason why people might know Schumann resonance is because that is a measurement still taken today across the world, right? So we can read these measurements every day, see spikes when certain things happen, etc. And then the next one up from there would be 432. 432 hertz, beautiful. It's water, it's the frequency of water, right? Why would we play in anything else? And so when I see the 440, 432 comparison, it's a great comparison to have, great. But it's much bigger subject than that, and I think they kind of got us trapped on this 440, 432 comparison. 432 is awesome, but it's non-healing. It's not going to get you. It's not the key of David. It's not the master key, right? You can get to 528 hertz on it, but it's different. Another subject for another day. But here's what I would truly say with this little mice study that was just fascinating is it proved what I already knew, but it was the basis for the next study that he did. And so now this guy goes up, he does that first study, has all the data, it's wonderful. You know, basically if you expose somebody to 10 hours a day of anthrax, hard rock, dun, 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 and then you expose another group of people to Mozart, you could take, so what he did is, after the study was over, is the 12 mice, 6 which were exposed to Mozart, 6 which had no music, those mice could still be in a cage with each other. He brought them back to the pet store. And like I said, of the 6 ones that were exposed to the anthrax, only 1 remained, and he was beat down, right? So they killed each other. And like I said, he didn't get into the frequencies on this study. He just got into hard rock versus Mozart, right? And I wish there was another study where we could really compare a couple different things, because we need more data, right? And so I wonder, imagine doing like a kind of a study where you could go like, okay, well, let's put on 432 hertz, right? We're going to bring Christian music into this now. Let's take 432 hertz, which one of Bob Marley's albums recorded at. So let's give these little mice the same exposure to 432 hertz, which is water frequency. It's beautiful. You can't listen to the Bob Marley album and come out worse than you went in, right? But that's worldly music, non-Christian per se. So I wonder if we were to take Bob Marley, 432 hertz, set those mice off. Let's see what they do. Bet you they're going to be, at a bare minimum, happy. They're not going to be killing each other. That's for sure. Then I wonder, because we already know what hard rock does, right? Then I wonder what would happen if we were to take another group of mice and take any what do they call, contemporary Christian music, song, album, blah, 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 Hillsong, all this stuff that's poison to the soul, right? And so I imagine if we take a group, Bob Marley, worldly, but it's at 432, and then we take another group of mice at 440 hertz, which is the devil's frequency, which is what Christian music is in, and we expose those mice to that same exact 440 hertz, but with Christian music, I really wonder what the results would be. And in my experience, I would have to say, I bet you the Bob Marley rats, mice, no question, would be much happier and much get through that maze much quicker. Because that last study, the first study that I described, they weren't using Christian music, right? And nor were they were using a very harsh form of 440 hertz, right? They were using hard rock, nasty. We know what it is, right? Nothing's disguised. We know exactly what it is, right? But that Christian music at 440, it's disguised. It's like it's an angel of the light. It is. And so someday, sooner than later, I'm going to be getting a few studies done. And so I wanted to bring this first part of the lab rat. Oh, actually, they weren't lab rats. I apologize. They were bought from the pet store. And that was his first phase of his trial. The next one is when he went ape, right? And went and got legitimate lab rats, right? Very, very same genetics, all types of when you buy lab rats, they're the same. And he got 72 of them. And the results were similar. And maybe I'll make that in a different video. And this is what I want you to know. I love you. You know, I love everybody, even my enemies. And I want the peace of the Lord to be upon you. And I mean that. May the Spirit of the Lord be upon you. Amen.